Welcome back to another video. Today we are ranking every NBA team's offseason, so that means free agency, the draft, trades, everything involved with the offseason. Even we can account coaches, everything like that. Literally everything that has happened in the offseason for these teams. And obviously some of these are a little bit of, possibility to change. For example, I guess one of the teams I'm mainly thinking about is the Warriors. Are they going to end up making the trade? For Laurie Markkinen is mainly the name. Who knows? We have someone like the Pelicans. I don't know what the Brandon Ingram trade is going to look like if they do trade him. So yeah, like obviously there's still stuff that could happen for sure. So it could move around, but we're just going to be grading off obviously everything that has happened. And it starts us off with the Bucks. I would have to give the Bucks a C. I feel like it's just mediocre. Um, they really haven't brought in anyone aside from Torian Prince. They lose Malik Beasley. They haven't made trades. Honestly, the only thing is I actually could move it down to a D, I think, only because of I feel like from free agency alone and just they haven't made trades. The only thing they've done, obviously, is the draft, which I think they had a relatively decent draft. But overall, I don't know how much impact it has on them winning. And for a team that I think wants to win now, I feel like the urgency level is kind of like maybe a D, but I'll leave them at C for now. We'll see. Maybe I move them down to D. Well, like I said, C. Next is the Nets. And this is an interesting one because the return they got in the Mikal Bridges trade, I do really, really like. Now, however, I did say this when I, kind of ranked the draft. For a team that clearly it looks like obviously is going to be going into a rebuild, for you to not have any draft picks at all. Like, I get it's a weak draft class, but, like, to have 0 draft picks at all this draft class, you draft nobody. It is a little bit interesting. I don't know how I feel about it. But like I said, the Mikal Bridges trade I did, really like. Obviously, they didn't sign anyone really. They retained Nick Claxton, which I think is really nice. But overall, I feel like probably another C too. Like, just because aside from the Mikal Bridges trade, they haven't really done anything. And I feel like, for a rebuilding team, obviously I don't expect you to do a lot. But at least if you could go out and, draft a few players or something, or just a player, even in the second round, it would have been nice. Next, we have the New York Knicks, and I'm going to give them it's between a B and an A, because the reason it is potentially a B is only because they did lose Isaiah Hartenstein, so that is obviously very tough, and I don't know what they're going to do at center now, because they haven't got a replacement, and I've heard they, are trying to get, like, Walker Kessler, or trying to find a center on the market. So right now I'm gonna have them at a B. Obviously, these are all possibly gonna change once I have the full rankings, but I don't want to give out too many A's. So for now, I have the Knicks with a B. Okay, so we'll see what that is. But regardless of how you feel about if they gave too many picks to get Mikal Bridges, which I personally think so, at the end of the day, if it helps them win a ring, it doesn't really matter. Like, I don't really care. For me, if I were to throw in all my picks and win a ring out of it, then shit, I think it's, good enough value. So I think Mikal Bridges is obviously going to help them out a lot. They also, retained OG Anunoby. They also had, I think, a really, really good draft. So overall, they might be getting an A. The only problem is they lost Isaiah Hartenstein. Actually, yeah, I'm giving them an A. I'm going to give them an A. Like I said, we'll figure out later on if I have too many A's. Maybe they're one of the teams I move down to B. But they have had a really, really good offseason, aside from obviously losing Isaiah Hartenstein. Next, we have the Toronto Raptors. In this one, they might get maybe a lower rating. Maybe a C. I don't like so far how in free agency they basically are going to lose Gary Trent, it looks like. They didn't really add anything. And aside from the draft, which I think Jacoby Walter I do really like, And aside from that, though, I mean, they haven't really done too much. So I'm going to maybe give them a C, and it's looking like we might have a lot of C's, meaning I might move down. The Bucks, maybe. Who knows? The Jazz. The Jazz. This is interesting because I don't know if I want to give it an A. I feel like in their process, because this is, I think, all based off kind of expectations and for their personal situations that they're in. For this situation that the Jazz is in, I think this could be an A. I think they had an amazing draft, and they obviously didn't really do anything in free agency, but like for their, where they're at, they're trying to be a rebuilding team. I think only getting, players through the draft is really what matters for them right now. Like, they're not looking to go, sign some veterans that could help them compete. Like, for where they're at in their process, I think the Jazz had an A. Obviously, we have to still see what happens. There's rumors that Walker Kessler could go to the Knicks. There's rumors that they trade Lauri Markkanen to the Warriors. So, I don't know. There's a lot of trade rumors, so that could obviously change. But I think they are going to get an A simply just because the draft alone was really good for them. And like I said, for where they're at, that's really all they need. Next, we have the Rockets. And I'm going to give a little bit of a kind of like a maybe aggressive take, I would say. And I'm going to give them a D. The only reason I'm giving them a D is because after last season, and actually, I'm going to move it up for now to a C. I could understand where, like, maybe they just want to run it back. They still have a young team that just hopes, they kind of develop, and they got Reed Shepherd in the draft. Maybe, he does his thing, and, that's all you need. You don't need to make a lot of moves. However, I don't know. I just felt a little disappointed that, like, I thought for sure they were going to trade the pick, number 3, that they drafted Reed Shepherd with. I thought for sure after that whole, like, 3-team trade where they got all the Phoenix Suns picks for the Nets to get their picks back, I thought for sure, just based off how valuable those Suns picks are, they're for sure going to make a trade this offseason. And they didn't. And they haven't really brought anyone in through free agency either. So it's kind of the same team. Is it enough to compete in the West? I don't know, because maybe some of their guys develop and they look like a way better team just because it's a really young team. So, yeah, like, I don't know. I was going to give it an aggressive take. If so, that's what I'm going to do. Instead, I'm going to move the Bucks down to a D because I feel like I would be more harsh on them because they're more in a win-now mode than the Rockets, and they have had very little urgency, I feel. But, yeah, so the Rockets, I don't know. I just feel like C does make sense, I guess, because, I feel like it would have been nice to see them make some type of move. But it's, I think, okay if they don't. They have a young team. Just play out the year, see what happens. Next year is when you could maybe make a whole bunch of moves. You have a lot of picks. Anyways, next we have the Pelicans. And I'm going to have to give them a B. I'm going to give them a B for now. Obviously, I think drafting a center was really good. It's one of their, obviously, biggest needs and still is. So, drafting a center in the draft, I like that for them. I like Antonio Reeves, who they got in the second round. I feel like they got really, really good value for the DeJounte Murray trade. Like, I thought for sure there was going to be them trading Ingram. But I think this team still has a lot of questions. Obviously they haven't done anything in free agency except lose Najee Marshall. And there's still questions of what's going to happen with Brandon Ingram. Their center position still is obviously very questionable. If you want to be a competing team, I don't know if your rookie center that you drafted outside the lottery is really going to be that much of an impact year one. So, yeah, like, Yves Missi, like, he could be good long term, but I just don't know how much of an impact he'll have. Obviously, this team, I think, is maybe a better fit with DeJounte Murray. But like I said, this team, I think I have to wait to see what happens for the rest of their offseason before I fully grade it. just because I think this roster still has a lot of questions, and they've been in relatively the same spot every year. And so right now we have them at a B. Obviously, I could move this up to an A, but I just, like I said, I don't want to have too many A's, too many, C's. Like, I want to spread it out. And so for right now, we're going to have it with a B. Could be, possibly changed. The Lakers, it's between a D and a C probably. The only reason I would move it up to a C is I think Dalton Connect was a really, really good pick in the draft for where he was at for the Lakers. Problem is, I also do like the J.J. Redick signing at coach over Darvin Ham. I think that's a way better coach already without just, any experience. But overall, this offseason, they've really done nothing. They have signed 0 free agents. They already have, I think, 14 or 15 players on the roster. And so unless they're just going to run it back, they have to make some changes with this team. And they already have a full roster. So there's got to be some type of trade. Something's going to happen. And they just had no moves. Aside from drafting Dalton Connect. And, a lot of people talk about Bronny James. But, I care obviously more about Dalton Connect. But yeah, aside from that, like, they have done nothing in the free agency, and no trades. And that's not to say Rob Pelinka's not working the phones, but it's just not going well. So I'm gonna give it a D, just because like I said, I like the draft pick, but overall, for a team like with LeBron on your team, a player that's really, really old, you're trying to win, and to run it back for the same team, I don't think that's going to help you win a ring, because it hasn't worked for the last 2 years, and it doesn't really look like it's going to work. So yeah, I wish they could at least do something, but they're not. So anyways, the Bulls, they're getting an F. Are the Bulls getting an F? I think the team management gets an F. I'm going to give them a D. Just because I like the Buzelis pick, we're going to give them a D. And, do I like Buzelis enough to move from an F to a D? Nah, we're going to give him an F. The Bulls are getting an F. And it's really just based off the assets that they have. The management of it is just terrible. You lose DeMar basically for Chris Duarte, 2 second-round picks. You lose Alex Caruso, you get Josh Giddey. I think that's the best return, obviously, out of all the guys they've lost. And then, you lost Andre Drummond for nothing. It looks like Zach LaVine has 0 market, and that you have to maybe even attach picks to get rid of him. Rather than receiving picks. And then there's Lonzo Ball, where there's been rumors that they could buy him out. I don't know. Overall, this team just looks like they're in a complete mess. And like I said, the only way I'd move them up to a D is because of the draft. I think Buzelis was a good pick for them. But that's about it. They signed Jalen Smith. I think that could be a decent signing for them. But overall, yeah, terrible offseason. Timberwolves, I'm giving them an A. Am I giving them an A? Yeah, I'm probably going to give them an A. The draft alone was amazing. I think them and the Jazz had, I think, the best draft. And the Wizards. Those 3 teams. But anyways, yeah, they had a great draft. They signed Joe Ingles in free agency. I don't know how much of an impact he'll make at this point of his career. He is pretty old. But overall, I think this is a team where it's okay, I guess, maybe to run it back. They had a really good year last year. Maybe you run it back, and at the deadline, you decide to make some moves. So, yeah, I would say overall an A offseason for the Timberwolves. Relatively quick explaining it. Maybe we move them down to a B because it's only draft. I don't know. Who knows? Anyways, Trailblazers. Let's think. What have they done? They've traded for Denny Avdia. They have had the Donovan Clingan pick, and that's kind of really all they've done. I don't think they've signed any free agents. So I'll give them a B. I do like the Denny Avdia trade. I do like Donovan Clingan. I still got to see what's going to happen with the roster, as in, like, what's going to happen when Donovan Clingan's playing. Is he playing on the court with Ayton? Is he not playing? Or I think Robert Williams probably is going to get traded still, so I still have to see what's going to happen for the rest of them. But yeah, next we have the Nuggets, and I'm going to I think everyone knows they're kind of probably one of the losers, but I'm going to go all the way down to an F because with these two teams, I think they're also teams that are trying to win and didn't really make too many moves and are kind of quiet. For them, they're quiet and they're also losing players. So that's I think the big problem. Well, it's really only one player, but yeah. Obviously the draft, Deron Holmes I think was a good pick. They traded up to get him. And then after that, they obviously lost KCP in free agency, and they have yet to really find a replacement or even sign anyone. They traded Reggie Jackson, I think, away. So I don't know. I feel like this team is losing a good amount of their veterans, and maybe they just think the young players are ready to take over for them. I don't know. But overall, I think for a team, they definitely got worse. So I'm going to give them an F just because I think they relatively got a lot worse, especially with a lot of other teams getting better in the West. The Pelicans get better. Probably you could say the Mavericks got better. Or not probably. They did get better. The Thunder get even better. There's just a lot of teams that got better. So, it's not looking the greatest for them right now. But, hey, for the Thunder, we're giving them an A. The Alex Caruso trade, signing Isaiah Hartenstein. The draft, I feel like they didn't have that crazy good of a draft. But at the end of the day, I think what matters the most for them is Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein alone, I think, gives them an A. Great signing. I think it is a big need for them getting another big body like that. And then Alex Caruso adding some more defense to that team. I love it for them. Next, we have the Grizzlies, and I'm going to give them a C just because they haven't done anything except draft Zach Edey. And I thought coming into the offseason they might make a few moves just because their roster looks really, really interesting last year as they had, a lot of players in and out, the lineup from injuries and, different things like suspensions for Ja Morant. But, yeah, there's a lot of things that happen. I expect that maybe they could do a little bit more, but they haven't really done much except for, obviously the drafting Zach Edey. Next, we have the Dallas Mavericks. I'm going to give them a B. I think they added some good additions. I'm not as high as people are on Klay Thompson, I think, as, a lot of people to where it would be an A. So I'm giving them a B. Klay Thompson, I think, is a good signing. It's a good addition, especially for how much you're paying him. I think it's relatively, a good contract. But I don't know how much impact he really has. It's not the same Klay Thompson. I don't think people, kind of see that. But I don't think it's going to have that crazy of impact. I still do like Najee Marshall coming to the team. Overall, I think it's a B offseason. But, yeah, I wouldn't say it's good enough to be an A. So I'm going to keep it with a B. Next, we have the Spurs. I'm going to give them also a B, I think. Trading the 8th pick away was still really interesting to me for basically 2 picks that are really down the road. But I still like Stephon Castle. I do like that they brought in Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul, and they're adding some veterans around this team, which I think is definitely helping accelerate a rebuild process. And then I like the rookie. Obviously, I don't know if it's good enough additions to make it an A. Just because, they added some nice veterans, but how much impact do they really have on this team? I don't know. And I don't want to have too many A's. So for now, we're going to leave them at a B. I do think they've had a really good offseason, though. Next, we have the Phoenix Suns. And I'm going to give them a D. I feel like a lot of these competing teams that aren't really making moves, you got to give them a D. I mean, the Suns are in literally a terrible situation. So, I can't really, say that it's their fault, like their management's fault, but it kind of is at the same time. You don't have money, so obviously that's the biggest problem, but you created that. But yeah, so I mean, aside from the draft, I do really like them drafting Ryan Dunn, who they traded back to get, so they got more assets for, and I think it's someone that they would have took at the pick they already had, anyways. But yeah, so I think Ryan Dunn was a good, pick in the draft. But aside from that, I mean, they signed Mason Plumlee, and that's really it. The rest of the team is, they either re-signed some players, some minimum contract guys. That's really what this team's going to be and always kind of will for the rest of this, like, kind of Bradley Beal, KD, and Devin Booker era. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I just think it's a D. I mean, this team definitely needed to make a change after last year. And obviously, they're not really going to be able to, even if they want to, unless they trade one of those big contracts. So they're kind of stuck. I mean, they're cooked. They're cooked. Next, we have the Clippers. We're giving them an F. They lost Paul George. They brought in a few other bodies to hopefully replace him. But overall, it's an F. We ain't got to say too much about it. Same with the Warriors. This is an F. Obviously, like I said, Klay Thompson's not the same Klay Thompson, but you still just lost him for nothing, basically. And after the year that they just had, I mean, you definitely still want to maximize having Steph Curry. They haven't done anything to this team. Like, I mean, they've brought in a few bodies now that I think it's like, okay, they're starting to put together a few good players, but overall I think it's still an F offseason because I think they aren't getting any better. Maybe you could argue they go up to a D because they got Kyle Anderson, DeAnthony Melton, and Buddy Hield. But overall, I don't know how much it's really going to change this team. I think they need to make some bigger moves if they really want to see something, kind of shake. Like, nothing's really going to happen with that team. Next, we have the Pistons. I'm going to give the Pistons a B. I do think the Pistons have had a pretty good, offseason. Obviously, Ron Holland, I don't know if it's who I would have took at 5, but I still do like Ron Holland. And then overall, I think they brought in, obviously Tobias Harris. They brought in Malik Beasley. So I think they're adding some good assets around the team. I think Malik Beasley could be a sleeper for someone that is going to be, like, just overall a really big impact player. Tim Hardaway, they just have a lot of veterans coming to this team. And I do like it for the relatively young team that they have to add some of these other veterans that I think are better than the ones that they've had in previous years. So, yeah, I think it's a B offseason. I think they added some good, additions to the team. Hopefully it could help develop some of the younger guys. Next, for the Kings, we're going to give them... I'm going to give them also a B. I don't know if I like the DeMar fit enough for it to be an A. DeMar's fit on this team is definitely, I think, the most questionable thing. I mean, I like Devin Carter, but now, I mean, I just saw a thing like the other day that he's out for like the first 6 months. So he's out for a long time. I still think Devin Carter was a good pick for them. But overall, I mean, they haven't done anything, obviously, aside from bringing DeMar DeRozan, which I'm not expecting them to do, a lot of things aside from that. But, like, at the end of the day, DeMar DeRozan definitely makes them a more talented team. I think it makes them better. But I'm not too sure how much better just because of the fit with DeMar DeRozan. The spacing is always going to be a question whenever you have DeMar DeRozan on your team. Sometimes, and then also just it is interesting, like you have two guys that like the ball in their hands at clutch time with him and De'Aaron Fox. So I wonder how that really is going to go. But overall, it makes them a better team, but I wouldn't put it as A just because of the fit. I don't know. Next, we have the Cavs. And I'm going to give the Cavs a D. Maybe it's a little aggressive, but, I heard a whole bunch of rumors throughout, the beginning of the offseason, right after they got eliminated from the playoffs, that they're going to make some moves. They're going to, see what happens with Jared Allen. Maybe they explore a Jared Allen trade, Darius Garland, which I wasn't too big on them trading Darius Garland, but I could understand the Jared Allen one. And overall, I just thought for a team that I don't think with the current roster they are going to win, I thought for sure I would see some moves, and you really didn't. So that's kind of the biggest thing for me is a lot of these teams that are trying to compete, who have been in the a relatively same spot for a few seasons, um, you know, it's like, yeah, I want to see some moves. You gotta make some moves if you want to win. Let's not be the Trailblazers the whole time they had Dame. Okay, let's not just sit and be in the same spot every year. Anyways, next we have the Celtics, and this is hard to judge only because, like, yeah, they really haven't made moves, but like, do I give them a C for that? But like, I mean, they retained the team. They just won. So I mean, I don't know what you really want them to do. For that reason, I guess we'll give them a C. But like, I mean, maybe you could give them an A just because they retained everyone. I kind of just think, hey, whatever. It's a C off season. They haven't done anything crazy, but whatever. So yeah, I mean, they just won the championship. They're sticking running it back. I don't expect anything else. So obviously, I wouldn't say it's a bad offseason at all. Anyways, yeah, we have the 76ers. We're going to give them an A. Yeah, I mean, they got Paul George. They somehow retained Kelly Oubre, who I thought was for sure going to leave the team. I think Eric Gordon was a good signing. They got Andre Drummond was a good signing, I think, for the price. Overall, I think they've had a really good offseason. I like their draft pick with Jared McCain. Yeah, just honestly really, really good offseason by them. Like, really, really good. Next, we have the Hornets. And what do I rate the Hornets offseason? They got Tajon Salon in the draft. They got a few veterans, I think, with Reggie Jackson coming to this team. I would give it a C. I mean, I'd probably give it a C. I feel like it's whatever. Like, for a rebuilding team, I didn't see too many nice things that I'm super excited about to come for this team. And I think that's a lot of things for these rebuilding teams. Like, I'm excited for the Jazz. I think they had a good draft. I'm excited to see that team. The Hornets, who are also in the rebuild, I don't know if I'm really excited about any of the moves they make. So I probably am just going to leave it as a C. The Wizards, I'm giving an A. Kind of like I was just saying with the Jazz, I am really excited to see this team. Which sounds crazy because it's the Wizards, and I mean, they were just terrible last year. But I think they had some good, signings. They signed Valanciunas. They signed Sadiq Bey, which I think was a really, really good contract. 3 years, $20 million. I thought that was an amazing contract. And then overall in the draft, I think another team that definitely won the draft. You got Alex Sarr, who I think should have been the number one pick. You ended up getting him at 2. They got my favorite player in the draft in Bub Carrington, who I think will be amazing in the league. You got Keyshawn George, another really good pick, I think, for where he was at. And I think they just had a really good draft. They had a good offseason. They brought in some good players. They got Malcolm Brogdon back in the Denny Avdia trade. I don't know if they're going to trade him, keep him. I don't know. But, yeah, overall, I think they've had a really, really good offseason. Next, we have the Magic. I'm giving them a B. I like KCP. I like, Tristan da Silva's fit on the team. Overall, I think it's a B offseason just because it's, they made some decent moves, but I don't know if it's too crazy to where I'm like, okay, yeah, this team is an A. So, yeah, I would give the Orlando Magic a B. Pretty simple. They got KCP. It's really all. Miami Heat. We're going to give them a D. Another team, again, I'm saying for all these teams that I expect to make moves and they didn't. So yeah, that's why I'm giving the Heat a D. I do really like Khalil Ware, which I don't know how it's going to work with him and Bam. Obviously, I'm assuming he's going to come off the bench, but if he does go crazy and all of a sudden he looks really, really good, what do? You play Bam at the 4? I don't know. But anyways, I like Khalil Ware, but overall, they haven't done anything in the offseason aside from draft Khalil Ware. And this is another team that has looked pretty similar for the last few years. And every year, it's like last year, we're going to trade for Dame. This year, there's rumors they trade Jimmy Butler. Every year, it's like there's rumors that they're going to do something and they don't. And so that's why I'm going to give them a D. The Atlanta Hawks. I'm gonna give them a C. I'm gonna give them a C. Or do I want to give them a D? I don't know. But anyways, yeah, they traded obviously, for Dyson Daniels in the DeJounte Murray trade, which I think is a good, young guy you can get to add to this team. But overall, I think maybe you could have got a little bit more out of DeJounte Murray. But overall, I don't think it was too bad of a return. In the draft, you get Richasar, who I think, it's not the best player in the draft, so that's why, to me, it's not like a good pick that they had with number one. And overall, obviously, there's still a lot of questions of the direction of this team. Some people, might think this team's going in a rebuild route. Some people might think this is just a retool and they're trying to still compete. I don't really know what's going on with them. I don't know what's gonna happen with Trae Young. I don't know what's gonna happen with this team in general. So I'm just gonna give them a C. Maybe you can move it down to a D if you don't like, some of the moves they have made. I don't really care for them. And then for the Pacers, I'm gonna give them a B. I think for this team, they didn't have to make too many crazy moves. They have a really young team. I think the chemistry is really nice, and you don't want to mess that up. So you don't want to make too many crazy moves. But you still brought in, James Wiseman. I think they had a pretty good, draft considering they only had second-round picks. And overall, I think they just had a decent offseason. They haven't, like I said, made too many crazy moves. But, hey, you don't need to make crazy moves every season. I think it all depends on where you're at in your stages of your team. But yeah, so that's going to end it off right here. With all of our A's kind of being, the Knicks, Jazz, Timberwolves, Thunder, 76ers, and Wizards. Those are my top teams in terms of best off seasons. When it comes to worst, I think it's the Bulls, the Nuggets, the Clippers, and the Warriors. And honestly, I think you could move down the Heat to even F. Like, I feel like out of all these teams, the one that I expected to make the move the most is the Heat, just because I think they've been the same team for the longest out of all these teams. And I thought for sure they'd make a move. Overall, yeah, I mean, kind of just quick rankings. Obviously, we'll see. There's still a few free agents on the market, but none that I think are too crazy of impacts to really change any of these ratings. And then obviously there's still possible trades that could happen and all that. But, we have Summer League starting today, so we'll probably talk about some Summer League soon. And if you care about, college football or football in general, NCAA is about to come out, so we're going to be playing that. But yeah, so that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.